In Money Watch, the global economy is feeling the impacts of the West's unprecedented sanctions on Russia.
In the U.S. and Europe, energy prices have soared to all-time highs. A gallon of gas now costs an average of $4.32 in the United States. That's up nearly 25% in the past month. And in Russia, the effects of the sanctions are far more significant. The country has been largely ostracized from trade with the global community. In turn, the Russian economy is collapsing as the ruble's value continues to fall.
However, the war continues despite the economic impact as Russia presses forward with the invasion of Ukraine. Let's bring in Ukrainian economist and assistant professor of business and finance at Columbia Business School, Tania Babina, for more on this. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. As you know, the U.S. and its allies have levied several waves of unprecedented sanctions against Russia while stifling the Russian economy. But this is not stopping the invasion of Ukraine. Can you put that into perspective for us?
Yes, thank you for having me and for the coverage. I think economists are good at understanding what kind of assumptions they're making to do predictions. And it's not clear to me that the assumptions that the West making, at least the sanctions that are made so far, are valid. And here are two reasons. The first one, narrative, is that the oligarchs somehow are going to miss their yachts and they're going to become angry and will stop Putin. That's an assumption here is that it's oligarchs who control Putin, when in reality it's Putin, his KGB and state police who runs the state, and oligarchs are just puppets who run his empire. So that's one wrong assumption. The second wrong assumption is that somehow Russian people will miss their McDonald's and they will go in millions and protest against the Putin. But the reality is that the majority of Russians support this war because they're brainwashed. His popularity jumped. Russians think that they are liberating Ukraine from Nazis. And one thing you need to know about Russians is that they are more idealistic than materialistic. If they think they're saving their brothers from Nazis, they can take a lot of pain.
So let's talk about a little bit more of that pain. The sanctions are obviously having a ripple effect on the global economy, with energy prices soaring since they were put in place. So I guess my question is, in terms of preparations and in terms of looking at how energy prices in the United States and other places, for instance, are soaring, was Russia, in a way, better prepared for these sanctions than the rest of the world?
That's an interesting question, right? There is a natural hedge to Russian economy because it's very unbalanced economy. It's 70% of exports, one half of the federal budget is energy exports, right? So as prices soar and as the Western civilized world keeps buying Russian oil and gas, the West is directly funding Putin's war. So I think we need to rethink here what the West can do. And I think there is no other bigger, most impactful thing than just stop buying Russian oil and gas and more generally energy exports.
Going into week 3 of this war now, Professor, what else needs to be taken to end this war? And is attacking the Russian economy the best way to do it?
I think we should start asking the hard question, which is how the world economy and geopolitical situation will look like if Russia takes Ukraine versus if the West can stop Russia. And we need to be very clear that the Ukraine is just a beginning. If Putin can take Ukraine, and in all likelihood with all current sanctions he will, China is already seems to be helping on the path helping Putin, then Ukraine will become the platform to further terrorize the West and the post-Soviet Union countries. His goal is to rebuild USSR. He does not stop at Ukraine.
Professor, I just want to sort of widen out here for a second and sort of look at how the U.S. has handled things in your view, in your opinion. The biggest miscalculations that the U.S. And the Biden administration have made about the ongoing war in Ukraine?
I think that's one of the biggest one, which is I have a feeling that people assume that it's okay to give Putin Ukraine because that's where he can stop. But with a bully, you need response with a force. That's the only way to stop this war from becoming the Third World War, which I think it's already started. His problem is not just with Ukraine. He was pretty clear that his problem is with NATO. In December, it just, for some reason, the Western civilization does not take his ambitions seriously.
All right, Professor Babina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.